Welcome back, everybody. Are your customers logging in consecutively or on consecutive days, like on the 22nd, 23rd, or 24th of the given month behind me? That's a question that online businesses are asking incessantly. And today I'm going to show you how to look at your DAU and calculate the percentage of that DAU that's logging in consecutively. And we'll do this together in MySQL. When it comes to owning or supporting an online business, don't just look at retention. What you need to do is ask and find out if your customers are logging in consecutively day after day. As you can see in the analysis behind me, this is pretty basic. It's just basic retention on installs. So of all the installs, the percentage that log in the following day. This is pretty standard. This is day one retention. In addition to that, what's also very common in the industry is to look at your daily active users and see the percentage of your daily active users that also log in tomorrow. This is day one retention on your DAU versus just your installs. But again, here on the channel, we really like to depart from traditional or basic ways to look at things and rather ask deeper questions that really help to navigate the business. And behind me, we're still looking at DAU, but we're looking at that DAU that has started a consecutive login streak, the DAU that has ended a consecutive login streak, the percentage of the DAU that's in the middle of a consecutive login streak, or the DAU that's not logging in consecutively at all. So with these four metrics, you get a better understanding of how sticky your app is or how truly good the retention is on your app. So let's go ahead and get started and move this over to MySQL. Okay, so here in our demo database, we're just going to start with our fact player logins table, which has every customer and their login dates. I'll pull 100 records so you can just see what this table looks like. And as you can see, here are customers and their login dates. Now, let's just recreate that analysis for dates over the last 30 days. So let's add that logic into our where clause. So we will do where login date is greater than or equal to the current date. But we will do a date add interval -30, like that. And I will show you this worked by doing a count distinct of login date. And the value returned should be 30, meaning we are returning the last 30 days. Okay, there's our 30 value right there. And I'm just going to pull 100 records so you can get a visual of this. Bring in the two columns we need, which is just customer ID and login date. You can turn this into a subselect and call this entire thing customers. Okay, now the next step is to basically pull the last 3 dates prior to this login date for every customer and every login date. So what we can do is we can look at this example right here where we have this player that logged in on October 25th, 2024. What we want to do is for this record, we want to bring back 3 dates or the 3 dates prior to October 25th. So that would be October 24th, 23rd, and the 22nd. And with those trailing dates, we'll be able to calculate the percentage of the DAU that had consecutive login activity. Okay, so let's move on to joining to our date table. So we have a date table. It is called dim date. And it's just a table with 2 columns. The second column is just a column of dates. So we're going to use these date values and return the trailing 3 dates per customer and login date coming from our subselect here, which is called customers. So we will do a left join over here to this dim date table. We call this dates. We can do on dates.date. It has to be less than our login date, but it also has to be greater than or equal to minus 3 days from our login date. So we will do date at interval -3 day. And then we'll bring across these trailing dates. Just call this trailing dates. Let's pull 100 records. Okay, so if we look at this one customer with the ID ending in 4177, they logged in on October 14, 2024, and this date from the dates table, the second table in our left join, was successfully brought across. You can see that because in our trailing dates field, we have the 3 dates previous to October 14, 2024. We have October 13th, October 12th, and October 11th. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create an index with values ranging from 1 to 3. And what it's going to do is we'll have this login date value, October 14th, but then for the 13th it'll say 1, for the 12th it'll say 2, and for the 11th it'll say 3. Meaning 1 day ago from the 14th, 2 days ago from the 14th, and 3 days ago from the 14th. So let's do that now. Order it by descending. That way it takes this value, October 13th, which is the greatest value between these 3 date values, to begin there so that 1 is ascribed here rather than 3. That would only happen if it was an ascending order, and ascending order is the default, so we have to specify descending. Let's just call this date index. Rerun another 100 records, but with the newly added window function. Okay, here we are with our result set. So as you can see, the 4th column representing the window function got added. So let's see if it's working as intended. We have this one player here that logged in on October 31st, 2024. So given that the trailing 3 dates prior to that is going to be October 30th, the 29th, and the 28th, right? So October 30th is 1 day away from the 31st. October 29th is 2 days away from the 31st, and October 28th is 3 days away from the 31st. So this is working. Awesome. Now, the very next thing we need to do is to join back to this table here, this fact player logins table, because we need to find out if this player logged in on each or one or some of these trailing dates. So let's go ahead and do that. Just rename this players. Players and customers are pretty synonymous. Okay, so we're ready to do the join. Let's just do another left join. Do it over to our logins table. Call it logins on players.customer ID equals logins.customer ID and players.trailing dates. So not login date, but trailing dates is equal to logins.login date. Then we'll add a case statement up here and say case. When the login date in the second table is not null, then 1 else 0 end. This is just going to be a flag. We can call it the login flag. And what this is going to show is for each of these trailing dates, we're going to see a value here. It's going to be either 1 or 0, and it's going to be in a fifth column called login flag. So let's run a couple records. Okay, great. So here's our data, and here's our newly added fifth column, which is the login flag. So remember, we joined on customer ID and trailing date with customer ID and login date from fact player logins. And if the login date from the second table, this right here, is not null, then we get a 1, meaning we know that this customer logged in on this trailing date value. So the next step in this process is to basically change the aggregation level of this table. So right now, per customer and login date, we have 3 trailing dates. So we basically took one record and expanded it to 3, where we had a customer login date and 3 trailing dates, and now we want to collapse it back down to 1 record, where it's just customer and login date. And rather than the 3 trailing dates creating 3 records, we're going to move them up to columns so that we can collapse the data back down to 1 record, where it's 1 customer, 1 login date, and then the 3 trailing dates and the information is organized across the top in the form of columns rather than records. So let's do that together now. Let's call this records. say when the date index is equal to 1, then the login flag, else 0 end. We'll take the max on this. We'll call this trailing date 1. This trailing date 2, trailing date 3. Now remember, this is 1 day away from the login date, 2 days away from the login date, 3 days away from the login date, and all happening in the past. So yesterday, day before yesterday, etc. Let's not forget to group by. Expand the size of this window so you can see the full query we've written so far. Okay, here's our data. So we successfully transposed this data by taking 3 records, collapsing it down to 1 record, and organizing that information across the top in the form of columns. So that's great. We're going to call this entire subselect ready, because we're ready to go. In our customer ID, our login date, and now with these 3 columns, we can begin to write our case statement for our consecutive login day logic. So the very first thing we need to figure out is, has a player or customer begun a consecutive login day streak? So let's do that now. So let me explain this. So every customer that has a login date obviously means that they logged in on this specific date right here. So if we want to know what percentage of DAU are starting a consecutive login day streak, we can say the customer logged in on this day and they logged in on yesterday, but the day before yesterday they didn't log in. So technically their consecutive login day streak is starting now. So it's pretty exciting. Okay, so in continuation with our case statement, what we're going to do now is add the logic to see if a consecutive login day streak is ending for a player. So again, every player has logged in on the specific date, but we want to know, have they broken their streak recently? So let's figure that out. So with this logic, we're going to say trailing date 3. So 3 days ago from this date, they logged in. And then 2 days ago from this date, so the day before yesterday, they logged in. But then yesterday, they broke their streak and didn't log in at all, even though they logged in on this login date here. So because of that, we're going to categorize this logic as having broken a consecutive login day streak. Now we're going to add a third piece to this case statement, which is going to be whether or not the customer is already in a consecutive login day streak, meaning it's already in progress. It hasn't started, it hasn't broken, but it's been going on. So for this one, it's pretty straightforward, because if they don't evaluate true on these first statements up here, then what we know is, hey, this is a player that logged in on this date and yesterday relative to this date here. So that's 2 days side by side consecutively that they've logged in. So like a Monday, Tuesday, so we can say that their consecutive login day streak is in progress. And then we also need the opposite of this. So we will say, if the user logged in today but didn't log in yesterday, then we will say consecutive login day streak not in progress. We'll finish this with an else null end. We can just call this category. And then let's just run a few records, just so that we can see some example output from this new logic. Okay, great. So here's our data. And as you can see, per customer, per date, login date, we've categorized them and categorized their consecutive login activity. Whether they've been consecutively logging in at all, if they have a streak, if a streak has started recently or ended recently, we have all that information. So the last step now is to aggregate this information. So we're going to do that by simply putting this into a final subselect. We will call this ag. We'll do ag.loginDate. Then we will do ag.category. And then as for our actual aggregation, we're going to do ag.customerID. But we will do a count distinct here and rename it to DAU. Let's go ahead and run this final query. I'll let you see the whole thing. And there it is. Great, so here's our resulting data. We have the login date, we have the consecutive login date category, and then a count of DAU aggregated by those two columns. So we're now ready to move this over to Excel. Okay, so the best way to organize this data is to actually move it over to a pivot table. And we're going to put the date here say DAU. And we can actually grab this, copy it. Paste it over here. Just grab these header values here. Move them over. And then we can just put a percent prefix here to say the percent of DAU that has started a consecutive login day streak, etc., etc. Okay, so all we need to do is basically just take this value here, divide it by our overall DAU. We want the row to move and not the column. Let's turn this into percentages. We have our dates here. Let's call this date. It's the login date or the DAU date that we're looking at. Here's our data. Let's actually just change this a tad. We'll turn this into a combo. Make DAU area. And then we'll add some lines here. Secondary access for these percentages. Alright, we're getting somewhere. So here's what we want to do here. Let's make sure that DAU is starting at 100. To reduce that volatility, let's thicken these percentage lines just a little bit. We're also going to increase the font size everywhere because it's just way too small. Let's just make this chart a little more legible overall. Zoomed in numbers and information here shortly. Correct percentages. We can give ourselves a nice title here. Close consecutive logins. Let's expand this a little bit to 20. Okay, so this is actually shaping up to be pretty nice. Okay, so to round out our walkthrough that we just did together, this is a pretty cool analysis because it shows you DAU, and rather than looking at basic retention on installs or day-over-day retention on DAU, what we're looking at is we're looking at consecutive login activity. So right here at the very top, you see this yellow trend line. That's the percentage of your DAU that's logging in sporadically. So they don't have any consecutive login day activity. They're logging in maybe a Monday and a Thursday, but they're not logging in Tuesday and Wednesday, for example. So with this gray line right here, this represents the percentage of your DAU that has an active login streak, meaning they're logging in day over day and their streak is not broken. With this turquoise line right here, what we see is this is a percentage of your DAU that just recently started a consecutive login streak, meaning they logged in today, yesterday, but the day before that they didn't log in. So they're brand new and just started a streak. So this is that population or that cohort right there. And then very lastly, with this orange trend line, this is the percentage of your DAU that just recently ended a streak. So they logged in today, they didn't log in yesterday, but the day before yesterday and on trailing day 3, they also logged in. So this is all very helpful information because if you look at it on a very macro level, what you know with this online business is that around 55% of their digital audience is logging in sporadically. So they're not logging in consecutively or on consecutive days, but 45% of their audience is, where they're logging in basically every single day consecutively, and or they're starting a consecutive day streak. So this is really good information. The other thing you can do with this is, this population right here that just recently ended a consecutive day streak, you can target them and reactivate their activity and re-engage them and get them to get back to where they were previously, where they were logging in consecutively. So that's kind of an opportunity here with this analysis as well. So overall, thank you so much for joining this tutorial. I hope this has helped, and have a great day.